go down in the woods today, you're sure of a big surprise. If you go down in the woods today, you better go in disguise. For every bear that ever there was will gather there, because today's the day the teddy bears have their picnic.
Everybody's thinking about me, but I feel alright. Everybody's out to get me, but I feel alright.
I got a review copy of this from Sony. We have to say that in the video, otherwise they send bees after us. Well, folks, I hope you like refueling a bike. I hope you like babysitting a motorcycle, because the art of motorcycle maintenance is pretty much the driving point of days gone here. You're either refueling it or you're fixing it. Even after you upgrade the bloody thing, you're still at regular interviews. Why do I keep saying interviews? I've already done another take of this, or I said interviews instead of intervals. Anyway, at regular intervals, you're either refueling it or you're fixing it. It is a babysitting bike simulator. Alright, that's over-egging the pudding a bit, but it does get frequently annoying. And outside of that, it's not all that brilliant. It's not bad. It's a perfectly serviceable open-world zombie game. It just doesn't do anything particularly new or interesting or exciting. It is a fairly straightforward game of sneaking around, stabbing zombies, or running up to zombies, bashing them with a stick, or shooting them. And the game cribs many, many things from many other games. There's some Horizon Zero Dawn in there in the way the open world behaves. There's lots of The Last of Us, right down to the Uncharted-style combat with bullet-spongy enemies, and relatively inefficient shooting, if I'm honest. Firing guns isn't all that fun here, and it feels like Uncharted. There's Red Dead Redemption inspirations in terms of story presentation, right down to the point where there is a sequence when you're driving from one area to another and music kicks up like in Red Dead Redemption 2, except it's relatively early in the game and doesn't feel earned at all. So when they do it a second time, because of course they do it twice, and the second time actually feels a bit more deserved, the sheen's completely taken off of it because they already did it once, and the second time feels really self-indulgent. The game also struggles in that it doesn't quite know what it wants its main protagonist to be. In cutscenes and for the general story, he's a relatively straightforward, generic white guy protagonist. You know the type. The type that are often called Jake or Jacob in video games, although he's called Deacon St. John in this one. In cutscenes, he's relatively, there's nothing to him. He hasn't got much depth. Whereas in gameplay, he's constantly muttering to himself like he's a survivalist who's, like, gone a bit wrong due to years in the zombie apocalypse, and that's actually compelling. You're playing the game, you're like going into a bandit camp, because of course it's got a bandit camp, it's an open world game and they need bandit camps. You know, you're sneaking around, stabbing up bandits, and he's muttering like, "Hey, yeah, how'd you like that, huh? You like that, do you? After you're all the killing of the people, yeah, I fucking like that. You're gonna stab you up, I'm gonna fucking slit your throat, yeah, fucking hell, you're a fucking zombies." Like that, muttering to himself like he's gone warped. And it's really interesting, but it doesn't really reconcile with the story version of Deacon St. John. This is true for many characters. There's one character who, during the gameplay dialogue, is supposed to be almost blackout drunk. Then the cutscene happens and he's perfectly sober. Then it goes back to the game. He's drunk as a fucking judge again. The game is up and down with that, and the story overall is all over the place. At times, it actually gets quite interesting, and you're into the character relationships and a little bit of the intrigue. Then it hits a point where it just drags, and the quality dips, but it goes up and down. Sometimes I'm playing this, and I'm like, this is really quite compelling, and I'm eager to find out what happens next. And then, for vast swathes of the game, I'll be sat there saying, get on with it. Because it needs to bloody get on with it. But it ain't that bad. I realise I've started off with a lot of complaints, but I found myself playing it a lot. It settles into what they call the gameplay loop, where wandering around, striking out from the base and coming back and going out and coming back, doing all these bounty hunting jobs or these story missions, it settles into something very satisfying, something very easy to get into. It's what I would call a very playable game, in that you might call, in the same way you might call a movie a very watchable movie. It doesn't mean they're outstanding or stellar, but they're perfectly good times. And Days Gone is a perfectly good time. Nothing about it, as I've said, is all that amazing. The world is fairly dismal and bland. The zombies themselves are stock standard. I was a little disappointed when I encountered the first boss zombie and it was just that really factory standard, typical big, bulky zombie. Just a big, bold, strong zombie. Okay, I've fought those in dozens of games. Oh, look, it's another screaming zombie. I really love screamers as zombies, but these ones are about as cookie-cutter as it gets. The zombies do have one key standout feature that I really like, and that is the concept of the zombie nest. These zombies make their nests out of tree branches and what is heavily suggested to be their own shit. And they're these black, gnarled, almost womb-like structures that you find and can burn around the map. And they look really interesting. I love the visual design of these twisted, gnarled, dirty, filthy-looking nests. And as flat as some of the characters can be, the performances are top-notch. The voice acting is great. Deacon St. John's actor does an incredible performance with what are at times rather corny, ham-fisted lines. This is backed up by the music as well. It's got a really nice little soundtrack, and the songs it uses, even though it looks really cynical because they're quite clearly trying to ape Rockstar, they're still really nice songs. Visually, the game is a noticeable step down from Sony's recent output. Part of this may be a compromise due to the fact that Days Gone features rather large hordes of zombies. That was one of the big selling points. But the hordes don't really come up enough to justify it, I feel. They are there, they wander around, but for most of the game, it's scenarios like this. A handful of zombies that you can sneak about and kill. The stealth is somewhat fun, although the AI for the enemies, it's terrible. And the rock is the most powerful weapon in the game. If you're playing this game, never discount the rock. You've got an infinite supply of them. You can use them to target individuals. So if you throw a rock, you can get the person you want to hear it to come. They can hear it from a mile away. They'll dutifully wander over so that you can sneak up to them and then stab them up. The rock is amazing. And it makes stealth somewhat trivial and straightforward, but it's still somewhat fun to sneak up on these idiots and take them out. And I do kind of like the melee combat. It feels, or rather it looks messy, but because Deacon snaps toward enemies so efficiently, the close-up camera angles that doesn't always track the flow of the combat still works and actually gives it a rather tense, deliberately restricted view. And the enemy's attacks are telegraphed enough that for the most part you can dodge and then get right back into slapping them with whatever bit of lawnmower blade or stick with nails in it that you found. There is weapon durability, and it sucks. Pretty much all of the bargain basement survival elements of this game suck. Stamina management can be annoying. I've already mentioned the bikes. Weapons need either fixing or replacing constantly. Even if you've upgraded your melee path, which I recommend, you can upgrade your shooting path, and in time, all of them are worth upgrading. Deacon St. John has 3 different skill trees: melee, guns, survival. I prioritise survival, then melee, then guns. Survival has some amazing skills, like the ability to use the by now obligatory detective vision that's in a whole bunch of games, because, you know, this game has all of the obligatory features. You can upgrade that to see enemies through walls and highlight them in the environment. Very useful, especially when you're trying to clear out bandit camps and there's one enemy left and you're trying to find the bloody bastard because they've wandered off somewhere. But anyway, skill trees, straightforward, bog standard zombie fights. This is me picking off a bit of a horde. It's best to try and isolate and pick them off one by one. I say one by one, I mean group by group, segment by segment, let's say. Because if you're caught in the wrong environment with a giant horde, you're basically dead. They will kill you in seconds. Don't get caught. Don't get caught. And don't run out of fuel, as I did in this area, where the only known fuel can that I knew was in this part of the map was surrounded by about 100 zombies. Too many to face, with not quite enough resources to take them out. It's possible to take out a massive horde, but I just don't find the rewards are worth it. In that I didn't find it all that rewarding at all. It's fun to do once or twice. Then I find the appeal of fighting a gigantic horde and watching your ammo deplete to zero ain't all that fun, really. But yeah, if you do get caught without fuel, then good luck with that. It happened to me once. Once was enough. It's not helped by the fact that fast travelling anywhere also consumes fuel, and if you don't have enough fuel to fast travel, you better go get some. There's just a lot of little annoyances. There are physics and visual bugs that happen a lot, floaty heads, certain things not connecting right, like collision detection and all of that. Some characters momentarily walking sideways on walls, just all sorts of weird things. Nothing majorly game-breaking. I found some rather abrasive stutter when it was loading areas at times. It's trying to be seamless, but it's not 100%. And I've gotten really down on the game just because there's a lot to complain about. It doesn't do itself any favours, but it's not unfun. It is enjoyable. It's far and away the weakest of Sony's recent output. They've had some amazing PS4 exclusive games. This ain't one of them. It's not amazing, but it is decent. It does its job. It does come after just so much zombie saturation. That's been going on for years, we know that. And this is just another zombie game. And it came out soon after World War Z, which is a very messy game, a technical shit show. But I like its hordes better than the ones in this, if I'm honest. They actually feel more like swarms, whereas this just feels like a lot of individual zombies thrown together. And that's Days Gone. A lot to complain about, but if you can dig through it, it took me hours to genuinely start enjoying the game, if I'm perfectly honest, and it did get genuinely enjoyable. There's this high point during the game's narrative where all the pieces are coming together. There's some inter-community politics going on with the various characters vying for power, and that's all really quite engrossing, and then it just sort of gets slow again. So it's up and down. I think a lot of people will have a lot of fun with it if they can deal with its annoyances. And that's Day Gone. It's fine. It's alright. Also, they need to not do that thing where a fucking mission doesn't trigger unless you leave the camp, even if the mission needs you to be in the camp. So you drive out, get a radio call, listen to it, and then have to drive back fucking inside.
It's like the enemies that we are battling.
You haven't earned this. Stop trying to be Red Dead Redemption. Stop it. Just stop it.